then that'll make them brave. I'm Orla. I'm calling from just outside London.
I'm Alex. I'm in Toronto.
And I'm Patricia Rozema. I'm in outside, just an hour north of Toronto, on a lake called Lake Caledon Lake.
We have Emily from Toronto, Lisa from Boston, Helen from London. So people are introducing themselves now. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. Well, do you want to start introducing things, Orla? And
people filter in. Cool. Sure. So hello and welcome to Lockdown Film School, everybody. This is our series of discussions with filmmakers in various fields. I'm Orla Smith, the executive editor of Seventh Row, and my co-host today is editor-in-chief Alex Heaney. So this week, we are delighted to be joined by Canadian filmmaker Patricia Rozema. This discussion is running in conjunction with our free online screening of Patricia's latest film, Mouthpiece. So our whole team thoroughly fell in love with Mouthpiece in 2018 when it premiered at TIFF, and we've been basically telling everyone to see it ever since. And this screening is our way to bring it to a wider international audience. So hopefully several of you participating in this Q&A had a chance to watch it this weekend. And just a reminder that the screening closes at midnight EST tonight, so you can find it at 7th-row.com/mouthpiece. So today, Alex will facilitate a discussion with Patricia for about 40 minutes, at which point we'll turn it over to you, the audience, on both Zoom and YouTube for some question and answers. So there are several ways you can ask questions. If you're on YouTube, just type a question into the live comments feed at any point in the session and we'll get to them at the end. And then if you're on Zoom, you can type a question in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen and we'll get to them at the end. Also, if you're on Zoom, please specify if you'd rather we ask the question on your behalf or otherwise we'll invite you to use your video and your mic to ask your question in person. So be ready for that. Either way, please let us know what your question is. Before we get started, I'll quickly introduce Patricia. Patricia's first feature, I've Heard the Mermaid Singing, premiered at the 1987 Cannes Film Festival in the Director's Fortnight, where it won the Prix de la Jeunesse and it was runner-up for the Camera d'Or. The film won numerous awards, including being ranked in TIFF's list of the top 10 Canadian films of all time. Rozema has since directed a wide variety of feature films, When Night is Falling, Mansfield Park, Kid Ridge, Into the Forest, and Mouthpiece. And she's also worked in TV, shows from Mozart in the Jungle to Amma Asante and various others. And her latest feature, Mouthpiece, was adapted from a play of the same name by Amy Nosbakken and Nora Sadava, who also star. The film premiered as the special presentation opening night film at the Toronto International Film Festival, and it was named one of TIFF's top 10 Canadian films of the year. So over to Alex for the questions.
Great. Well, thanks so much again, Patricia, for being here today.
Oh, thank you guys for doing this. It means a lot that you're, supportive of the film and sending it out to the world. We filmmakers depend on you. But I felt this special kind of support from you with this one, and that I feel like you got it in a way that many didn't. So thank you.
Oh, great. Well, our pleasure. We loved it. So I guess we want to start is, what made you think Mouthpiece the play could be a film?
I saw the play. I have a daughter who was working as a intern at a theater, and she said, "Mama, you're my mother. You have to buy season's tickets because we're selling them." I thought, okay. So I bought season's tickets, and it's a good theater, but I don't like to be committed in advance. And then And then I got a call that I should go and see this one. Someone else told me, you have to see this one. You have to see this one. And I brought a friend who was very sort of critical and high standards kind of fellow. And we sat there not knowing what to expect. And it was explosive. It was so exciting. I had seen nothing like it. It was a whole new language and addressed so many things on an explicit level, but then on an emotional level. And it just sort of vibrated on all sorts of subjects from feminism to self, loathing, to self compassion, to, criticism of to inherited misogynist views, to grief, to and just wildly funny, and then extremely aggressive. And I just was reeling after I saw it. It didn't cross my mind to make it into a film because it was so entirely itself. I just didn't think of it. I was just excited, and I thought, I want to work with these people. This is a voice. This is a new voice. I was very thrilled to work with them. And then it just so happened that Jodie Foster and her partner Alex Hedison were in town, and Alex, I don't know them well, but Alex had asked me, so, okay, we're in town, what should we do in Toronto? And I mentioned some restaurants and galleries and stuff. And I said, oh, but there's this play. You're never going to see anything like this in LA. It's like I've never seen anything like it. And she kind of caught on to my excitement. And so I organized tickets for them and got them slipped into the back so they didn't have to deal with people. And they loved it. And then, Amy and Nora are very funny about it. They're saying, someone said, we've got a special guest in the audience and they'd like to talk to you afterwards. And they thought, Margaret Atwood? And said, no. And then they met and said, aren't you Jodie Foster? But you're a movie star. This is trying. They didn't understand what she was doing there. And Jodie was very excited. We went out for a brunch afterwards with a bunch of us. And then they, through the kindness of their own hearts, for no reason, no advantage themselves, brought it to LA just for the fun of it, just to show their friends. And in the meantime, I was sort of thinking, I wonder if I could do something with this. At first, I thought, how about a television series, since that's, the way, that's where there's a lot of excitement and energy in series right now. But that was kind of none of us could think that way. Then they came up here. This is my cottage here. This is the lake. This is my little cabin here. I didn't know them at all. And I said, do you want to just come up to the cabin and talk about it? And then they said, sure. And then on the way, we were all thinking, but I don't know you at all. What are we doing? And we just hammered something out. And that's how it started. But yeah, what made me think? It's just I'm very not strategic, and I'm not even terribly intellectual about it. It just it feels like it has meaning that I don't fully understand. That's what I need to keep moving. If I get it too completely, then it's done. It doesn't need to be unpacked. It's like a song. They say when you fall in love with a song and you listen to it on repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat, it's like you're solving the puzzle of this piece. And that this one felt like a puzzle I needed to understand or to solve.
So, how do you think about how to keep some of those more theatrical elements in, but then, because I think what's really remarkable about this is a stage to screen adaptation. I've never seen anything like it. It doesn't feel like a play at all, even though there are elements of it that are quite theatrical. And if you're like, oh, okay, it's based on a play, okay, I can see there are ideas that are theater related, but it's very much a film.
Well, thank you. That's what I thought would be the excitement of it, I thought, because the central sort of formal conceit, the two people playing one, is a highly theatrical conceit. And I thought, but if you just make the whole film exceedingly documentary, very slice of life, very verite in every other way except that there's two people playing one. I was sort of thrilled by the newness of that idea and the kind of strange juxtaposition of such a high concept, you know, in a very, very kind of workaday kind of kitchen sinky feeling. That's like a rough magic, I think would be a phrase I've heard before that appeals. So, but yeah, I've met with a lot of resistance when I was talking to different funders and agencies and stuff. They said, but it's so theatrical. It's going to feel like a play. I said, no, it's not. Has anything I've ever done looked like a play? It's like, it's always cinematic. I will definitely make it feel like these are real people. It's just that there are two of them playing one, and that will be part of the mystery. I thought that was interesting too, is to not give it away right away. And have, who are these? Are they lovers? Are they sisters? What are they to each other? Have that be part of the unpacking. That's interesting for the audience. But yeah, everybody said, but you can't. How are you going to show two people as one? I said, well, you just do it. And they said, but how? I said, you just do it. But what? How will you do it? I said, you just put them there together. You know? And then we did have to work out certain conceits, like, is it two bicycles or one bicycle? Two bicycles is two separate, so one bicycle. Do they dress exactly the same or a little bit, mostly the same? So in fact, I remember telling the costume designers, make them, I think I said 17% different from each other. And then, you know, we just invented the rule that, like, if they touch something, like when they're doing shots, when they're doing drinking in the bar, only one of them touches the bar at once. And then we invented the idea that if they're dealing with someone else, the eye line always goes to the speaker, and then the other person is off being the other half that's unacknowledged. So there were just you know, rules, but they were very fluid rules. We decided that, you know, the experience of being two people in your mind is not solid and clear and fixed. It's very mutable. I don't have a debate with myself between the good Patricia and the bad Patricia, or between the extroverted Patricia and the introvert. It doesn't feel like that. It's just chaos and people speak. So we tried to, and there was a strong push from various people to make one person the good one and one the bad one. And we resisted that completely, because I think that's the history of dual characters like Jekyll and Hyde, or there's the history is that there's evil and good, and we didn't want to do that because it's much, much murkier and more complicated than that.
I mean, there are some scenes where they're both sort of switching places, like in the sex scene, and I guess like at the party too, with like who's yelling at their mother. I mean, how did you figure out where you wanted to have them switching, or where you like? I mean, did you do both shoot like every scene with two of them, or did you have certain scenes that you knew you wanted that for?
Just in those, we decided on a script level, there's just those two scenes. We would shoot the whole scene with both of them, and then intercut. And trying to think of what the logic was behind having it be those two scenes specifically. But I think we felt like that they were, you know, sex and rage, and, you know, parental confrontation. Those are very visceral and unstable kind of experiences. So it would make sense that the parts of themselves were being jostled about while they were in the middle of it. You know, going to buy a bra or something is sort of, it's obviously fraught and complex, but it's less inclined to erratic shifts. But mostly we wrote it, this is maybe interesting to people, but we wrote it just as Cassandra. And then after the fact, divided up the roles between tall Cassandra and short Cassandra. And then even during the shooting, we might have had, a scene which was supposed to be short Cassandra being, carrying the scene mostly. But then I would give it to tall because I felt like, I don't know, it sort of became clear over the course of shooting who was good with this kind of emotion versus that kind of emotion. And it highly instinctive. It was a highly instinctive process.
Cassandra is always policing herself and watching herself or worried about how people will perceive her. And I feel like that sense of sort of women under surveillance is something you've explored in all of your films. So I guess I'm wondering just about how you think about that in different contexts for this film.
Well, I've definitely, tried to explore the female psyche. And I've definitely felt, in my second feature that very few people saw, it's called White Room. There were two women who were playing one person. They were pretending to be the same person, but they were two distinct women. And this is actually the flip. This is one person being kind of represented by two physical bodies. I tend towards a dialectical form of thinking. If I'm trying to make a decision, I present to myself one side and then I beat that side up, then I have a very different, kind of an oppositional dialectic, a back and forth between two ways of thinking. And that's what was the most thrilling when I saw the play. I thought, everybody knows this feeling. Everybody knows what it is to be at war with yourself, to feel conflicted. We talk about it all the time. But I've never seen it represented physically. What a thrill this is to actually have something that is universal. I swear, men, women, everyone feels this division within ourselves. But I haven't seen it before. So it's completely fresh and eternal. Like that's gold for a filmmaker. So I was so thankful that they had kind of presented such a refreshing idea. And that I could ride on their coattails. But yes, I think it's, although men may feel that division sometimes, I think it is more specifically a female phenomenon. I think largely because we've been property for most of the history of humanity. And we have thus consequently had to view ourselves from the outside because our value was external. It wasn't something that came from within. It was other people who had authority over us could decide what our value was. So any sensible human would in that world, and still in our world, but less so now, but still horribly prevalent, this way of thinking that a woman's exterior reality is more important than a man's exterior reality. So, and I do think, of course, how a man looks and dresses and carries themselves is important, but not nearly as much as a woman. So I think women are so much more familiar with that cognitive dissonance of outside and inside. So that's why I loved it. I loved making something that acknowledged that. And then also in the end, please don't let what I say about this movie limit how you feel about it, because I know that there are any work worth its salt has many interpretations, but in the end, I feel it's a lot about self-compassion. So yes, I've explored the female psyche, and I continue in this one with Amy and Nora, obviously, in a huge way, because we all wrote it together. It was very, very much a collaboration on a writing level. I definitely directed it, and then I, included them in decisions in the editing quite often, because I really, really wanted them to be at home with this piece and comfortable. I couldn't stand the idea that I would take it and I'd have my wicked way with it, and then and have them be horrified. And yeah, we invented an odd duck.
So how did you approach creating the aesthetic for a Mouthpiece with your whole team? It feels like a very warm film, even though it takes place in winter.
Oh, that's lovely. The warmth was very much part of the tone that I was after. In fact, I remember telling the sound, the dialogue editor and the sound designer, I said, think of warm chocolate for the sound of it. And when I spoke with Catherine Lutz, the look of each scene was born out of the content of the scene. That's the only way a look makes sense. That's the only way style makes sense. It can't be something that's imposed on top, because then it's just imposed on top. It's not coming from within. So we would go through each scene and discuss it emotionally. What's the feeling here? Is it erratic? Is it vague? Is it angry, or just all the emotions a scene could be, and then find a cinematic language that would address that. And that's the challenge. I studied philosophy. I took a course in aesthetics, and I always remember this one professor that spoke about the three principles of beauty, a very loose definition of beauty, but it was unity. So it all has to fit together. It all has to be part of the same film. Diversity, because there has to be enough change and shift and surprise to keep you engaged. And fittingness, so that you use the right tool for the job in a specific scene. Unity, diversity, and fittingness. And I'm always I was 20 or something when I heard that first, and it always struck me as those are the three principles I have to constantly come back to. And I still do it all the time when I'm trying to figure out whether to use a Steadicam or a dolly or a crane or a handheld or a hi-hat or whatever the tool is, where the camera is in the room has to come from the material itself. It can't just be something I go, although sometimes I don't know and it's still instinctive, and I'm hoping that because it's all filtered through one personality, it has the unity. But so the warmth was definitely baked into it when I saw it. When I saw the play, the humanity of these two, all the sharp edges and the kind of sometimes nasty portrayals of other characters, it was still a deep love and warmth, and both of them have that completely. So the warmth was very much part of it, and the colorfulness, and the lack of formal consistency. They don't always have to be in the same room. One person can enter the boyfriend's apartment and the other one is just behind the couch and their legs are sticking out. So, if it amused me or us, then that was enough reason. So yeah, the aesthetic was born over time through discussion. I think Catherine would probably tell you that our conversations were wide ranging, roaming, kind of conversations, and we would sometimes spend a whole day talking just to figure out how to shoot one scene. But it was, and it's really important that all my keys of the heads of departments buy in emotionally, that they are connected emotionally, because it's fine for me to feel it or Amy and Nora to feel it, but if other people are not in it in the same way and not bringing their heart, the audience will feel it. So yes, warmth, a kind of a ricocheting of the mind, and we'd always come back. Amy, Nora, and I, when we were writing it, we'd always come back. But is that what it feels like? Is that what it feels like? That there's a good Patricia and a bad Patricia, or a good Cassandra bad? No, that's not what it feels like. It just feels like voices. So we would make decisions on what does it feel like, not what have we seen before, not even this makes more sense. We didn't even care about sense particularly, which may show. So yeah, reverting back to our own experience. And the play was from their experience of suddenly realizing that although they thought they were feminists, that it was a form of superficial feminism in reaction to men, and still so hence defined by them. You know, not like eating fries, even though you hate fries, because you don't want to be a woman who's concerned about being overweight and not being attractive to men. You know, that was a dawning for them. So dawning. So I had the light shine. It was a dawning, you know. That's why the light sort of explodes when they're sitting in the bathroom at the Communist Daughter, the bar. I often, it's an interesting discovery for any of the audience here who wants to direct, but I've discovered that I find the right method of directing a scene through the verbs used in the script. So if, for example, if it's she stares at him fixedly, you know, camera is fixed. If she's reeling, it's the camera is reeling. If she's, you know, so to find the, you know, obviously find the expression of the main character, and whatever will create in the audience that same sensation. I don't create any kind of distance, ironic distance, or there's no commentary. It's I'm trying to bring you, all you people watching, anybody who watches it, I'm trying to bring you into the moment, not stand outside, watch it and judge it, which is a, you know, another legitimate way to make art, but it's not mine.
I mean, you did mention the sound, and I'm wondering a bit about that, because especially that, you know, they make these wonderful sounds, not just the soundtrack, but they're, I don't even like the sounds. I don't even know how to explain it. It like sort of like not quite a groan. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. Those sounds that they made were in the play. So, you know, I could have chosen to lose them, but I thought everyone gets this. Everyone knows what it is to be incoherent with rage or grief or being overwhelmed. So why not show that and hear it? Also, the sound is the singing and the humming. That a lot of that was new. Part of my attraction to this project was, oh my God, and the soundtrack's already written. How fantastic! And just the two of them, we could do it so easily. It won't cost a lot. I'll just do it very, you know, handheld and rough in the city. It just felt very doable. But then the music that they had written didn't feel as appropriate for the film as it did for the play. So I had the glorious experience as a filmmaker of just sort of asking Amy to write to a specific scene. I said, can you give me a more of a going along interior piece for the biking? Because nothing really fit. And then she would write as in go into her closet, which had, you know, sleeping bags tacked up to the walls and a microphone and a computer with a think she said like a 2009 version of GarageBand, and hum into it and sing into it. She sings with what she calls her lyric, the music and the sound and the emotion of it comes after, or comes before the words, and the words she calls English-ish. So sometimes they are distinguishable sounds and words, and sometimes it's just English-ish. So, and then I could sort of put it up against picture and then even cut to the rhythm of it sometimes. And she discovered it was interesting. She went back to see which of the ones I chose of the pieces that she wrote, and it was almost consistently the first one in the morning when she woke up, and she was still swimming in the soup of her subconscious. And that was the one that felt the most urgent and immediate and raw for me. And those would be the ones that I would pick. Yeah, it's so many. I told Amy and Nora, because it takes so long. You think, oh, I'll just make a quick film, but it's a marathon of caring. So you have to care about every little element. For instance, maybe this only interests the filmmakers in the audience, but we watched the movie. At every screen, every reading, I felt something when the mother leaves the daughter at the daycare. That always gets me. Something about that always gets me. And I don't know, because I'm a mom, I don't know. But then and for every cut, even if there were other problems and it was unbalanced and clumsy and unwieldy, somehow that scene would always work. So then we went through, we recorded it all, we mixed all the sound, and we were just doing the final playback, and that scene left me cold. And I looked to Amy and cold too. They said, "What's going on? I'm not feeling anything with that scene anymore." And we talked to them. Did you change it? Did you EQ it in a way? Or it was like, no, it's just it's all the stems you gave us. It's all the same. And then my brilliant editor said, "Oh, the voiceover is too loud." And we brought the voiceover down a fraction and let the humming and the music come up a fraction. And suddenly the wave of emotion happened again. So it's such a delicate thing. You can wreck it with one bad decision. You can destroy it's as strong as its weakest link. And that link was weak for a moment, and we almost robbed ourselves of a key moment of empathy. Fascinating to me.
I mean, I know that you've edited some of your own films yourself, and then Lara said that you were very involved with the editing for Mouthpiece, and I guess just wondering about what you like about that process. What were the challenges?
Well, that's really where the film comes together, isn't it? I mean, I sometimes think of it, it's like writing, like you write it, you shoot it, and then you write it again when you're cutting it. Because a movie is just a bunch of shots in a row. And it's kind of like when you're shooting, you're collecting the words that you're going to use when you tell the story later with pictures and sounds and dialogue. So you take half a day to get and then you take 2 hours to get cat, and then you get another half a day to get sat down. It's just, so you have, and in the end, those are the only words you have. And you can make sat down cat or you can, but you can't make other words. So the editing is crucial. You can really change the psychology of a moment with the pacing though. And that's where it's really important to have an editor as good as Lara Johnson, where her psychology, her perception of people is so instinctive and genuine that she knows that someone saying, how are you? Someone else says, I'm fine, thank you. That's completely different if it's, how are you? I'm fine, thank you. Or how are you? I'm fine, thank you. Like the pacing will change the meaning completely. So not completely, but it can really, really affect how we perceive it. So she's very good at that. But I really need to be involved in every tiny little moment. I have had scenes where the editor cut it and I changed nothing, and that's the way it went into the movie. But mostly I need to just go over it and over it and over it and eliminate every little cringe point. I always think of that as part of what I do when I'm writing or directing. Or I said that to this woman, the showrunner on this Netflix pilot. She said, well, that scene seems really good. And I said, yeah, it doesn't, I don't think it has any cringe points. And she said, well, that's a low bar. And I meant it as a complete compliment, but it's not a low bar at all, because most things make me cringe. The trash heap is so huge out there. So yes, editing is crucial. I love it. I love the process of it. And I always discover something later when I'm watching the movie with audiences where they laugh, and it always tramples a line. So if you know that, like, so we did lots of test screenings too, which is kind of associated with big budget, soulless, generic kind of movies. But I actually think of it as like a poetry workshop where you're trying it out on people, or a theater workshop. So it's really important to try it out, to get people to be honest with you, because they tend to just be nice, because that's easier. But to give people the comfort to be brutal is really important in the early stages.
Like there's so much that you have to edit for in the sense that like it's making sure that people know that they're the same character and that we're keeping track of both of them. There's the flashbacks, the musical numbers, the comedy, and then the whole thing just like moves at a clipped pace. Like it's kind of amazing how much you cram in there without it ever feeling like bloated or like I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. It's just, in a way, I can't believe it's a 90-minute film because there's so much in it, but then you never feel like, it's never like, oh goodness, looking at my watch.
Well, thank you. That's the worst. I mean, that's the minimum. It's not to bore people, right? That's the minimum. I have no trouble throwing things away either. Like I'll have slaved away and spent, thousands or hundreds of thousands on scenes. And then I go, no, it's not working. Just chuck it. Because I always think no one will miss anything that they haven't seen. So I shouldn't care, just because I liked it, and I can love scenes, and I'll throw them away quite happily. Because it's a piece of music in the end, right? So many metaphors work for films. It's a piece of music, so it has to have its own coherence and its own rhythm, but it's also a person. I often think of a film as a person. What kind of person is this? Is this a vain person who says, hey, look at me, huh? Like that can be the spirit behind it. Or it can be a person who's sobbing constantly and you can't relate to them because they're just crying too much. Or it can be a person who's chuckling so much that they never get to any meaning and they're tiresome after a while. Like you might chuckle along with them for a while and then you go, I'm going to talk to somebody who's got something to say. So, it's the editing is in the end what makes the movie coherent. And this one, it might feel like it. Sometimes the films that look the most kind of invented in editing, in fact, are quite carefully plotted out, because the transitions, it can feel. I have this thing all the time where it feels like a pizza with too many toppings. And that was my fear with this one. I always work from partly with what I would love, but also what my fears for the piece. And this one, could be a pizza with too many toppings. And we all know how that is. It's not one thing and they all just slide off and like, it doesn't work. So this one could have been a pizza with too many toppings. So just picking, just the right number of toppings was important. And that became shorthand. In fact, when we were editing, someone would present something to me and they'd say pizza. I said, yeah, pizza. So yeah, it's a mysterious process that never ceases to fascinate me. I feel so lucky that I discovered it early on and have never wavered, like from being mesmerized by what it is that we do. Just the fact of fiction. Why do we need fiction so much? What's that about in our little hearts and minds? Why is that? But then, there's so many tricks that you think you've learned, and then you discover somebody does something in a completely different way, and you think, why had I not thought that was possible? I'm always wondering which rules that I've inhaled that in fact I don't need to listen to, or I don't need to pay attention to. I keep getting to the end of my answers and thinking, what the fuck was her question again? So I just stop, and I'm not 100% sure I've answered. What was your question?
Yeah. I'm wondering if you could tell us about shooting in Toronto, because I feel the location, it's so great how much you go on location and you're just like, that is Toronto architecture, that's the Eaton Centre, the Communist Daughter, and the streetcars, and it's like such a wonderful little celebration of the city that had several people say that after seeing the film, now they want to go to Toronto.
Oh, that's good. That's good news. Yes, all of you. I saw someone's from Barcelona. There's someone. Come to Toronto. Come to Toronto.
Well, and Orly, you did the mouthpiece tour of Toronto, right?
Well, when I came to Toronto for the first, no, I didn't. That's an exaggeration. But when I came to Toronto for the first time last September, I did. I went past the Eaton Centre. I was like, oh, it's the More from Mouthpiece. So I went in and I was like, oh, Mouthpiece. Even though I know that
wow.
Yeah. But
that's so exciting to me, because I do feel like part of what we do as filmmakers is record place. Just for historical reasons. You're just kind of showing a place. I told the the production designer, don't if you could only find it in Toronto, then put it in. Like, make it entirely specific to this place. Make it a very, very highly idiosyncratic piece that's wedded to the geography and the time of where we are. I think because the conceit of two people playing one was so big and so theatrical and so hard to believe, that I thought I wanted everything else to be just documentary true. But getting your bike caught in streetcar tracks. I can't tell you how many people say, oh my God, I almost have PTSD when I see that, because I've done that. More people I know have gone, what is it? Tea kettle, head over tea kettle. What is it called? What's the saying? Anyway, they've fallen on the streetcar tracks because their bicycle gets stuck in it. Yeah, it was very thrilling for me, because I hadn't shot in Toronto for some time. Somehow I'd always been shooting in other countries, and so to be working with people I shared a sense of humor with, who I shared a sense of place with, and the stuff on the streetcar, we couldn't get a permit, so Catherine carried the camera with her coat over top. And then we went on to the subway, and then she just kind of opened it up so that, the lens wasn't covered by a coat. And then instead of saying action and cut, because I knew that attract attention, I'd go 3, 2, 1. Because there was some simultaneity on that, where they're, loosening their scarf and wiping their nose, I think. So we wanted to get some of the 3, 2, 1 now. 3, 2, 1, stop. You know, because and people would look for a second and then they were bored. Same thing with the Eaton Center. We had to go in there. We had a whole plan. I love this. We had a whole plan. Oh, here's Don McKellar because I asked him some gardening things. We went in there. They wanted $50,000 to shoot in there, and I said, "But people can come in here with a camera or a video camera and shoot. Why do we need to give you $50,000?" That was huge for us. So we went in there with the coats over the camera again, and then the plan was when security came up, I would go up to them and pretend to be a tourist en say, oh wat leuk, dus Eaton Center, ik vind ze heel mooi en ik wil heel graag even, I speak Dutch, so then I thought I could kind of distract them, and they knew exactly what they were supposed to do so that they could keep shooting while I was like, you know, like being the decoy. So they caught us right away and we kept shooting and we got it, you know, but so it was fun to play that way. And then the only way we could get a full feature in this criminally short schedule we had was that many of the apartments are in one house. So on College Street, there's a house in Cabbagetown that was Cassandra's apartment, that was the aunt's apartment, was the father's apartment, and it was the boyfriend's apartment. So each rooms were just dressed to be different apartments, so we could save ourselves the time of loading everything into a truck and getting to a new location. Yeah, it's all coming back.
Well, we have a bunch of audience questions now, so I will pose those to you. So first of all, we have Anna, who asks, well, she says, first of all, the film is so fantastic. And why do you think it had trouble getting distribution? I feel everyone should see it.
Oh, thank you, Anna. Do you know any distributors? I did something that maybe wasn't wise as a producer. I worked with Christina Piovazan, who's a very, very intelligent and capable, fantastic producer. But I was really keen to make it quickly before Amy and Nora went on tour, basically. And so we didn't get a sales agent. And that's the way, you know, most of these independent films work, is you get a sales agent and you combine it with some soft money like Telefilm and Ontario Creates, which we did get. And then you do some pre-sales, and then so you have those sales already in those countries, and then the sales agent gets it into festivals, and they sell it to all their contacts. We didn't get the sales agent, and we just went to some people that I knew or came to know who had who loved the arts and who had been generous with other artists before. And so, like, I met this woman at the film festival the year before we shot, and I said, do you know anybody who's ever invested in films? And she said, well, Maria has. And I said, oh, do you have her number? And they said, yeah, sure, here's the number. So I texted, I said, Maria, hi, this is Patricia Rozema. I think I might have a project that it would interest you. So we had coffee right there during the festival. And I said, probably the worst investment you're ever going to make, because the chances of getting money back are very, very slim. But every once in a while, I've had a couple that have hit and they've really worked. So it's a big risk, but and then just talked about what I hope to do with the movie, and talked about the play and how brilliant Amy and Nora were and are, and she jumped in. And then I said, do you have any friends who might be interested? And then she had friends, and they jumped in. And then other people jumped in. So this beautiful young woman with some of her inheritance, and her mom jumped in. And anyway, then that made up the money that we might have got from sales agent. But so it got it made. Fortunately, it might not have been able to be made, I don't know, but we got it made. But then we didn't have the sales agent who, you know, could really get it out to the world. So that That made it tricky. I still wonder whether that was the right call, because now here it is. I think lots of people really love it. You know, like I've made several films and I can tell when people go, oh, it's nice. Thank you. You know, it's really up there on the screen or whatever, you know, they say that is terrible. But this one, I can tell people are moved and perplexed and just engaged by it. So I hope it finds its day still. I really do. I would, but I keep moving on to the next thing without cleaning up the past. So to answer your question in a long, non-answer way is, I don't know. It's probably my mistake. If you can help me, help me.
Well, next, G asks, how much do you plan and or rehearse before a shoot, and how much do you leave it up to what happens in the moment?
Plan it to an infinite degree of detail. Always have a shot list. I always have my own drawings, often little scratches, but you know, with the DP, we always know what we're going to do, and then sometimes find things, mostly add things. So I would say that it's 100% planned, but 80% or 85% of the plan is what you see in the film. It's really important to me that it feels really free and loose. That's like, and it's hard to get that because the machine is so cumbersome. The filmmaking machine is just so leaden, and you know, just the fact of repeating things and having to remember continuity and all those things suck the life out of every moment if you're not very, very careful. I try to keep a very loose and positive attitude on set, because I find when people are afraid, they're not creative. Fear doesn't make you good. Fear makes you, you know, try hard but stiff, you know. So to create a really loving and maybe even maternal atmosphere. But yeah, plan it to the nth degree, and then stay open, feel it, let it flow through me. Go, you know, like something, it happens all the time where it's something that the script has been poured over, every line makes sense. You've got your shot list. I always know exactly how I'm going to edit it. That changes maybe more, like more. Say it's 60% what the edit plan was. But then I read then I see them do the line, and it goes, and I think, well, that doesn't make sense. That's out of the blue now. It feels too writerly. And then I'll change it in the moment. Like a big thing, a huge thing that was changed. The play doesn't have a eulogy. The play has no eulogy at the end. It just, they get to the point, they get to the mic and don't speak at all. And everybody said, but you need the eulogy. You're making everybody want and wonder about this eulogy. What are they going to say? And then you get there and you don't say anything. It's a cop-out. And we thought, no, the film itself is a eulogy, and it works in the play, but somehow when it on the film, it actually felt like there was a disturbing absence. So then we wrote something and assembled images, and then so now it has a eulogy. The trick, like Amy and Nora they didn't want to have it be like a slam of the mother, and they didn't want to have it be, a nice sort of gush of positive emotion around the mother, because that would diminish the complexity of the film. So we landed on where we landed with the mix, and landed on something very physical. Because I remember when my mother died, I felt I had authority because Amy and Nora haven't been parents. They haven't, and I have, and they haven't had their mothers die. And I had those two experiences. So I really felt like I could legitimately bring something to the script. And I remember when my mother died, when I was about their age, I was 30, a little over 30. I was driving and I looked at my hands just after she died. And I thought, oh, I have my mother's hands. And it never crossed my mind before. There's something deeply animal, physical. It's like a wrenching apart of beings when a parent or a child dies. So we wanted to make it physical about the hand on the chest and yeah. So again, that's another case of going back to what is a real experience, not something we've seen in movies before. It's how movies are so fake, right? So it's like, wow, I saw the scene, and then they make the copy of the scene, and then someone else sees that copy, and then they make another copy of that scene, and then someone else sees it and makes another copy, and then it has nothing to do with reality anymore. But we find a kind of comfort in it because it's so familiar. And then people start imitating that scene in their own lives because they go, oh, right, I've seen a scene like this before. That's what I'll say in my own life. Like the one thing that always blows my mind is it's not what it seems when they're caught sleeping with someone other than their partner. Everyone always says, but it's not what it seems. I think, is that the only thing humans can say in that context? Like, are we wired to only have one phrase whenever someone's caught, cheating? Cheating is a funny word because it sort of assumes a kind of ownership and a right and all that. And that's a whole other can of worms. But yeah, I'm very committed to going back to the felt experience, as are Amy and Nora, which is probably why we hit it off so fantastically.
Well, next, Emily asks, how did you decide what moments to choreograph with synchronized movements? I saw them as moments of breath, but I wonder what function you saw them as having.
Oh, can you answer moments of breath, like breathing? Maybe she has to answer breathing. Yes?
Yes.
Emily?
Breathing.
Yeah.
Emily, if you want to unmute, you can talk.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so I just saw them as like maybe a moment of breath that like united taller Cassandra and shorter Cassandra to be sort of like one, and almost like giving the audience a sense of a breath as well. And maybe that explains it. Sorry if I'm being confusing, but I'm just wondering what you saw their function as and how you decided on those moments.
I love your use of the word breath, and I often do think in terms of that because I think of tension and release, of taking in and exhaling, that you have to have a rhythm that's gradually increasing, and then the final the denouement is the final sigh. So I think of tightening and then loosening for when we're finding the rhythm of the final film and the script itself. But yeah, part of it was just keeping it in the audience's mind. Like we went back and shot several of these simultaneity things after we finished shooting, because people loved them so much and I loved them so much. In fact, at the end of Mansfield Park, I don't know if any of you have seen Mansfield Park, but there's a moment where everyone slips completely naturalistically and unselfconsciously into perfect synchronicity. They all sort of drift off into reverie, imagining how things could have turned out. And then they come right back together all at the same time. And so I remember when I was writing that, I thought, People are going to ask me what this means. I do not have a clue, but I love it so. And it feels like it's reflecting what Austin was doing in the story at that moment. So that was already a love of mine, and so when I saw it in the play, that they would just very, very carefully, no, very, very casually put their hair behind their ears. There's something so. Here's a question. Can I use the word masterful anymore? Mistressful doesn't have the same power, but maybe we have to invent that. But it could be
You could just reclaim it as gender neutral.
Can we? Masterful. Masters and slaves and masters.
That's true.
But anyway, so but it feels there's a kind of like I think any artist is working with intention. So what is the point of this thing? And with if I'm making a sculpture, do I know what that kind of clay or that kind of marble does? So is there a control and a expertise with the material? That those moments reveal real expertise, and there's no trick to it. It was just work. It was just repetition. So we chose to put it whenever I felt like the audience needed to be reminded again that they are one person. And it was just a pleasure principle. Like whenever I felt like it would be fun, I could put it in, because whatever gives me pleasure, I think perhaps it gives other people pleasure. And so it's sort of the reasoning was wherever I could do it and not have it be distracting from emotion, because it is a kind of a, like if I had them both crying at the same time in unison, I think that would distract from the emotion, because you'd be watching their artistry rather than their emotion, feeling their emotion with them. So breath is a great way to describe it, because when we needed a breath, the mind was allowed to come in and go, oh, right, two people are one. And the emotion wasn't high at those moments. And then I could, shift into something else. We had so much fun. That, again, we took over the Hudson Bay store. It seemed to be nobody there. No one bothered us. And even the shoppers that were there weren't very interested in particular. And they were just, the thing where they drag their scarf. They're carrying their stupid puffy coats, we call them, and their scarf is dragging and they trip over the scarf. That was hard. We did that many, many, many takes to try to get that right. We've actually talked about doing another movie with 3 people. That would be hard. How do you get 3 people on a bike or whatever mode of transportation? Yeah. Because we are multitudes, as we know, each one of us.
Yeah, you should make a series and just keep adding the number of people.
And there's 10 at the end, and it's choreography. Yeah, it is. It's like it's dance. Like that actually, that's a great idea. You said it. Just add. Each episode has another person. Oh my God. It's limited to 1 season then, for sure, right?
Yeah. Anna had an interesting last minute question that I wanted to ask, because I'm also very interested in the answer. She says, whose idea was it to have Cassandra's mum's video collection consist of practically every film about weddings ever made? And I did, when I was rewatching it this time, pause it and try and analyze that DVD collection.
You want to unmute and tell us your theory?
Anna, you can talk if you want.
You don't have to.
If you unmute, you can talk.
No, she doesn't want to.
Okay.
Oh, no, I'm here.
Great.
I didn't see the button. Hello.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi.
Where are you? Where are you?
I'm in Newcastle, England, but I'm American, but I'm
Cool.
living in England.
Welcome.
So I guess my theory is, that her mother was, or the way that she saw her mother is that she was fulfilled by, with motherhood, and that being married meant something to her. I don't know. That's all I got. I don't know if that's on the right path or not.
That list was in the play, and they kind of talked about, it was in a moment, Amy and Nora would answer this better than I would, I'm sure, probably answer all of this better than I would, but I think it's touching on this idea that the mother had so many preconceived notions of what, or just was deeply invested in the idea of marriage, and it was her entertainment, her goal, her philosophy, her everything. There's pleasure in the idea of marriage, as there is for almost every film about women up until now, and even Jane Austen, when I made a Jane Austen film, it ends in a marriage. That is somehow conceived of as the, our purpose, the goal to which we all ascribe, and that's the only kind of way forward for women. So when she goes home and she's sort of relishing in all of the things of her mothers, she's also there taking in anew how completely awash in the heterosexual fantasy of marriage her mother was, and how that sort of seeped into her own psyche, but possibly unintentionally. I loved them watching the show together. I loved that. It was interesting. We had another woman who came in. No, it was Mev, actually. Mev, who plays the mother. She was watching them watch that movie because we weren't using her quite yet. And she said, I get it. I get what this is about. I said, oh, well, what is it about? And she said, it's about being your own best friend. It's about having your best friend in you. And I thought, that's a beautiful idea. That's a comforting idea, that wherever you go, you have this buddy with you and you're never entirely alone. So that was, so even, in making fun of your mother's obsession with marriage, you're not alone in it. It's kind of, but I think, a lot of those movies are, deeply actually misogynist. Drunk feminist films. I'm sure Alex and Orla know about it. It's a group that get together, and they all the women arrive and they drink and they shout out all of the sexist or racist or all of the kind of, and anachronistic assumptions or tropes in kind of favorite movies, Love Actually, or they've done a whole bunch of them. They love it. And I think that's where that scene, it doesn't come from that, but that's tapping into the same vein as drunk feminist films.
Cool. Well, we have a question from Emma White, who asks, at the start of your project, what were your thoughts on sort of bringing other characters into a two-woman show, and how did you approach that? And also, she says, love mouthpiece.
Well, then I love you. Well, that was part of when we translated the piece from a piece of theater to a piece of film. That was a decision to embody all those secondary characters, and almost all of those characters were in the play, I think. The boyfriend wasn't. That was new to the to the film. The Christmas party was new to the film. There was lots of things that were new to the film, but I felt like I needed that. That was just our own, or my own internal line in the sand, basically. Not line in the sand, but it was our own internal limit to the theatricality. So to have them play all of the characters would have felt possibly more like a piece of theater. I felt like, okay, I can go along with the one giant leap, which is two people are one. And then the rest should be as documentary as possible. In the play, if you've seen the play, you know, those characters, the aunt was much more annoying. And she is already in the film, but she was much more annoying. And the friend who she goes over to her house and, you know, who ate the chocolate and drank the wine already, they have wine together and they smoke a joint together. That friend was also a little bit more annoying in the, not annoying is too wrong, but it was satirized. It was more in the play. So once you put a person physically in a film, they have to act like a person. The sort of degree to which they can become an idea of a person is limited. I had that in my film When Night is Falling, which was a lesbian love story. And I had a preacher in there who I gave him all these horrible lines and horrible motivations. And he was a terrible creature on the page. And then once we were shooting, I was thinking, this feels like a cartoon. This isn't a real guy. This guy thinks he's really great and really loving and really, you know, has their best interests at heart. So I had to humanize him. So a lot of those extra characters we needed to humanize in order to make it convincing as a piece of reality.
Well, we have one more audience question who's going to ask live, Lisa.
Great. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Where are you?
I'm in Boston, and I just want to say initially that I am a fan girl. I'm a tremendous fan of your work. I thoroughly appreciate your work, appreciate your views, appreciate your style, and thank you so much for the work that you've done over the years. We're about the same age, so I've been able to view your work through time. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. My question is, I've been watching a lot of films, more films than ever by women, particularly because of the Turner Classic Movies Women Make Film Festival that's on now. And I'm wondering, do you think that women have a willingness to let viewers figure things out for themselves? Women directors have a willingness to let viewers figure things out for themselves more than a male director. In other words, they have a willingness to hold shots. They have a willingness to leave things unsaid. They have a willingness to appreciate the viewer's intellect more than a male director who feels that they need to tell the story precisely.
They need to mansplain.
Quite right, yes.
I mean, it sounds from your question that you believe that to be true. Do you?
Yes, I certainly do. I do.
That's interesting. That's interesting. I'm sort of cycling through women directors, and there's so many more now. God, I wish I was going to festivals now. It's like it was all men when I was going around. It was all men. In fact, I sat in a festival in Belgrade with Konchalovsky, and he said, Patricia, I'm sure, he hadn't seen my film, I'm sure your film is beautiful, but a woman's greatest act of creation is childbirth.
Oh, dear God.
And we were sitting at a table with all male directors, all very, very well known, and I patted him on his bald head and said, you poor old dinosaur. So that's very satisfying. don't know if that is true. I don't know, because I mean, now I think, now that women are in style, let's hope this style lasts a little longer. Women are being allowed into, all the other, like comic book movies, right? They're being allowed to make action and genre pictures with and have real money to play with. And once you're playing with large amounts of money, you have to listen to more people and you have to please more people. It could be the case that because women have been relegated to the smaller budget films, they were allowed to make works that were less overt and, have real obvious cause and effect narratives. So I do, this is just, I have to think of, I haven't thought about this question before, but that's my off the cuff feeling, is that it's kind of in this moment of time that may be true, but there's nothing inherent in a woman's character and a woman's storytelling style that requires or inclines us to be more, allow for more ambiguity and less less mansplaining. I mean, or less driving narrative.
Yeah.
I was fascinated, by the way, Celine Sciamma. How do you guys will know. How do you say it?
Yeah.
Orla, how do you say
that
it?
sounds right.
Yeah.
Alex, you found out the exact pronunciation.
Sciamma.
Sciamma.
I saw her movie, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, and I was blown away by it. I found it exquisite. And then I heard an interview. Oh, and that I'll tell one thing. I DM'd her on Instagram and said, I'm a filmmaker too, and I just want to tell you that your Portrait of a Lady on Fire has made me refocus my dedication on telling personal stories. Is that I felt like I could work through other stories that weren't as close to me, but I'm actually, in the time that I have left, I am very attracted to and the rigor and the restraint and the passion and the elegance and the but examination of very subtle ideas about, like, when you are the object of someone's gaze, where do you look? You have nowhere to look. That's a fascinating observation to me. And all of that. So I wrote that and just sort of sent it off and thought, and then she wrote back and said, "Dear Patricia," and I said, thank you at the end. And she said, "Dear Patricia," or "Hello, Patricia. My 16-year-old self, who skipped school and took a train to Paris to see my first lesbian film, When Night is Falling, thanks you." So it was really just thrilling for me that I could somehow have had even the tiniest little part in helping someone find a voice as subtle and sophisticated as that. I won't claim any credit in it, but it was a nice moment. So what was the question? Now that I say all that, narrative, are we committed? Are women more willing to have a narrative that's more open to interpretation? I think we have been, but I don't know that will be the case. I mean, women are great storytellers, men are they're great storytellers. The whole history of cinema has been the kind of the arc of white male triumph. And I think we know enough about that. I think we should hand over the equipment to the rest of the world. And people say, but what are all the men going to do? What are all those white men going to do? And I said, they weren't asking that question for us. But also, you know, that role where there was always a woman behind them who was, you know, coming up with a lot of the ideas and doing a lot of the work, and but was kind of unseen. That job's empty right now. You can, they can all have that. So
Well, maybe I feel
yeah,
I just
go ahead,
watch a lot. Sorry to interrupt, but maybe I feel this way because I do watch a lot of independent films and a lot of quote unquote forgotten films. And it just seems thematically to be really inherent in a lot of the smaller films. So I understand what you're saying. Maybe I just like the underdogs.
I definitely like the underdogs. I've always been attracted to stories of the underdog, the one that you wouldn't bother with, you know, that doesn't grab the attention, doesn't grab the mic, the one who isn't the great beauty or the great, you know, overachiever. That's always been much more moving and interesting to me. And I feel sometimes that, you know, I make movies that address my issues, my own personal issues, but of course I want them to have overlap with other people's in the world. And I feel sometimes like people who live in tiny apartments and lives are small and their expressions of themselves are not, they don't have much opportunity to express themselves, and they don't have a big voice in the world. To make a piece of art that says, I see you and I respect you and I know what's going on. I know that your emotions are as noble and as graceful and as expansive as that of any ancient poet of great repute. You know, like to give people the sensation that they are seen and heard and loved. Oh man, like that's a good use of a life.
Well, I think
but
that's
you might be right, Lisa. You might be right. You might be right. There might be something in female psyche that is more allowing of these more subtle, less overtly didactic storytelling. I have to think about that. Next time we do this, I'll have a better answer.
Well, yeah, that's a beautiful note to end it on. Thank you so much, Patricia, for doing this. This has been really, really wonderful. I think I speak for all of us watching when I say that.
Well, thank you.
And
Who was there?
I mean,
Anna, Emily. Okay. Anyway, thank you. And tell your friends about this movie, because I really still, I have this secret hope that it'll still find a life and get out there more widely, because we put all our hearts into it.
I mean, it's, well, for people watching, there are about a bit less than 6 hours left of our screening, and it's a 90-minute film. So it's very possible to, if you haven't seen it already, watch it or tell people to watch it at 7th-row.com/mouthpiece. So go ahead and spread the word. And yeah, and actually also as a plug, we wrote a book about Celine Sciamma's Portrait of a Lady on Fire and her work. So people can read that at sciammabook.com if they're interested. And we also included Mouthpiece in our book about Canadian cinema, which is about canadiancinemabook.com. And we've got a bunch of supplementary reading material on the film on our website. We've got an interview with Patricia and Amy and Nora, and we've got an interview with the editor Lara Johnston, and we've got other lockdown film schools with Amy and Nora, and one with Catherine Lutz. So plenty of stuff for you to delve into if you love that.
Wonderfully supportive. I love your taste, and I love your enthusiasm. I really do. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful film, and I think everyone watching would agree. Yeah, and thank you so much again. And thank you to everyone who was watching.
And Amy and Nora. Thank you, Amy and Nora.
And thank you, Amy and Nora.
Yeah. All right. Bye, everyone.
So, see you.
Thank you for your attention and care.